Hi guys, before I get started on my Project Life spread for these past couple of weeks, I wanted to just talk a little bit about printing up photos. I print all of my photos onto 4x6 paper using my Epson Picture Make Charm, and I print my photos, as in photographs that I've taken, in generally 4 different sizes. Sometimes I have a 5th size that I'll tell you about, and then I have another size that I use for screenshots. So the sizes that I use and the way that I decide which size to print each photo, I have managed to streamline over the years. And so the way that I do it is anything that is horizontally oriented, I will print in one of these 2 sizes, either 4x6 or 2x3. And the way I decide which size to print it is basically if it's any story that I definitely want to draw attention to, I will print it at 4x6. Also, any picture that has quite a bit of detail in it and the detail might get lost if I were to print it in such a tiny size, I will print in 4x6. And sometimes I will actually print things in both sizes if I'm not sure which way I want to do it. Also, I will print smaller sizes if it's a very low quality image. So these are pictures of my Nintendo Switch Lite, and it's taken with my phone, but the quality of the photo is really, really poor. And if I printed this up at this size, you'd see all the lines in the screen, and that would look horrible. Also, anything that's taken in low light, so it's highly pixelated, I'll print in this smaller format. And sometimes stories that are less important, like this is a picture of my closet. I'm not sure if I'm going to tell this story about how I cleaned up my closet or not. It's potentially a filler story here. If I feel like I don't have enough stories, I want to beef up my pages, or if I have a little gap and I'm not sure what to put there, I could put this card in there. Otherwise, I can just, skip that one. And the same with, I've got like 3 Animal Crossing pictures here. And so obviously I'm probably not going to tell 3 Animal Crossing stories in 1 month, but they're there just in case I need them. And they're kind of timeless too, so I can just move it forward to next month if I've got something that I wanted to kind of like note for memories of the future. Someday when I'm not playing that game anymore, I might look back and say, oh, remember that? So those are my horizontal photos. Then for all of my vertically oriented photos, I print them all at 3x4. And for me, that means with my printer that I have to print them at actually 2.8 by 3.8. And that's just because my printer doesn't print exactly the size that I want it to. Then any square photos I will print in one of 2 sizes, either 4x4 like these ones are, and this one is 4x4 because if I printed it any smaller, because of the low quality of the picture here, it's very, very dark and I didn't capture that very well. If I printed it in my other standard square size, which is 2x2, it would be way too tiny and you wouldn't be able to see Papa back there or really tell who these people are. So that's why I printed this one up at that size. So 2x2 or 4x4, 4x6 or 2x3, and then all of my vertical photos I just print at 4x3, and that just keeps the confusion level down for the most part. Then the other thing that I often include in my stories is various screenshots, either of news stories or Twitter notifications or just things that are kind of happening in life. It's a good way to capture pop culture or just news events and that sort of thing. What I found is that a screenshot can be captured within 2 by 3.8 or 1.8 by 3.8 inches and still fit in a 3x4 sleeve. So that's the way that I'm figuring out how big I want it to be, is basically you need the longest size, which is the length of it, to fit within that 3x4 pocket, or a 4x6 pocket will fit as well. So what I did was I just kind of messed around with the settings until I got it so that I'd kind of change the size a little bit, check the preview, change the size a little bit more, check the preview until I got it so that the whole screenshot was showing. And then I just made a note of what that size was so that I could pick that size every time. So as you can tell, I have a lot of photos and stories to scrapbook for the month of June. I prefer doing pocket pages twice a month so that I don't have quite this much to document all at once, but it didn't happen this month because I was doing some catch up from all the previous 3 months. So my June is going to all be documented hopefully today. And then we're kind of coming towards the end of June, and hopefully in July I'll be able to pocket scrap twice, and that will get me back to the pacing that I feel comfortable with for my pocket scrapbooking. So I'm going to put you on fast forward now, and we'll get started with those pocket pages.
Hello, so let's talk about how this page came together. I have my Project Life templates here and a variety of different page protectors. They're all design A, and that's the design I use the most. And so I have those templates, which I made quite a few years ago now, probably back in, I don't know, when my first year of doing Project Life, whenever that was. And they are just drawn out on cardstock. I used a marker and a ruler to mark out the template of a design A page protector. And I use that. It really helps me when I'm composing my page to just know that I've got all the cards that I need in order to fill out a spread. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just looking through my photos, and I'm just thinking about what stories I have to tell and how I'm going to tell them. Basically, I'm trying to decide how many pages I'm going to have to use in order to capture all of these memories. As you can see, I have a lot of photos, and those first two there that are mounted on the back sides of cards, I just trimmed those a little bit too small, and they didn't have the white border around them. I just basically wasn't paying attention when I was trimming, and so I had to mount them on cards, and I just took a single-sided cards as opposed to cutting some cardstock. I was just feeling kind of lazy, and there were a couple cards that I was pretty sure I wasn't going to use, so I just put them on the back of that. That's a little shortcut way to mat out a 3x4 photo, especially if you've got lots of cards and if some of them you're pretty sure you won't be using. So as you can see, I kind of sorted my photos into these categories, and they're story categories. So some of them are, like, I've got a big pile of photos that are individual stories, but then I have piles of photos that go together as well. I'm refamiliarizing myself with the kit. I'm using the Ali Edwards Stories by the Month kit for June. And so I just had a look at the cards that come in that kit and the embellishments, just to have a sense of how I might be able to use some of these products in the stories that I want to tell for this month. And so I am just setting out my cards in a way that, I'm thinking two things here. I'm thinking stories that I want to tell, but I'm also thinking visual balance and leaving some space for some journaling cards. And I have a sense as I'm putting the photos out, which photos I'm going to need some journaling cards for, and which photos I can either just caption or let the photo speak for itself or put a label right on the photo. And now what I'm doing is these news stories. I have 2 news stories that have multiple photos that go with them. So I'm going to use some of those Lift the Flap pockets from Simple Stories from the Snap collection. There they are right there. So I'm going to use 2 of those in the 3x4 size, just so that I don't want all of my page to be taken up with those screenshots. They're not very visually appealing, and it's just not necessary to tell the story over such a large amount of real estate. So I'm going to use that quote there, that pink quote card. And now I'm struggling a little bit with what other 4x6 cards to use here, because I've got a couple of different options here, and I really want to prioritize using the cards from the kit before I go into my stash to try to dig for my stash. The kit I'm using here, as I mentioned, is the Stories by the Month kit, and that is the $13.99 a month kit. It starts at $13.99 a month, so that's with a 12-month subscription, which I actually don't have a 12-month. I have Maybe I do have a 12-month to that one. I can't remember. I have a 6-month to one kit and a 12-month subscription to the other. And I do pay for my kits. This is not a sponsored video. So as you can see, I was able to fill in most of the gaps in my page protector, but there are a few gaps left. So I'm going to go into my stash, and I'm starting with my leftover Ali Edwards cards from other projects, just because I find that her designs tend to work well with one another. So I'm just drawing from I don't have a ton of Ali Edwards cards because I've only been buying her kits for a couple months now, but I did have a few. And then I'm likewise going into my Ali Edwards 3x4 card section and looking for a couple more cards. Now, if I wasn't able to find cards from these two sources, then I would have gone into my overall stash, which is sorted by color. But as you can see here, I am finding most of what I need in here. And I'm just kind of trying to keep track of how many cards I'm going to need exactly, especially with those flips, because you need 2 cards, at least 2 cards in the flip pocket, depending on if they're double-sided or not. So as you can see, I did go into my color sorted stash of cards here. And as I'm drawing from these cards, the things I'm thinking about is how much space am I going to need for captioning? Am I going to want to write a few words in the margins? If so, I better make sure I have margins and those sorts of things. Now, this is a double-sided card with the hearts, that green one. I really, really love it. But the problem is that when you flip it, then the back side also has hearts, and those hearts are going to be upside down. And so I'm a little hesitant to use it, but I left it out because I might use it as the bottom card in that flip pocket, meaning the one that stays in place and you're not going to see the back of it. If you know what I mean, which I'm not sure that I was very clear, but hopefully you know what I mean. When it comes together, maybe you will. So I'm just having a look at my stamps now, and I have these ones pulled out. So that one on top is the stamp set that comes in the kit. And then the other ones are stamps from my stash that I just suspected I might use. And so if you're wondering where I was just grabbing even more stamps because I didn't feel like I had quite enough. And I knew I had some food that was documented, so I have 3 different foodie stamps that I like to use. And I will talk about the stamps that I use as I use them and try to let you know which companies they're from. And so this is what I often do to start the process. Starting can be overwhelming and a little bit intimidating. So what I usually do is I start with the easiest thing first. So the card that I have the most solid idea for, or the card that's just the easiest to get done. And so in this case, it's this flip card because I know that the story kind of speaks for itself. I'm going to do a bit of journaling on the front, and then the underneath part I don't feel that it matters quite as much, just because, you're not going to see it until you flip it over, then you're going to be reading it. It doesn't matter if it kind of takes away from the flow of the page or anything like that, in my mind anyways. I'm trying to decide how to position this. I feel like that loving sticker, or not sticker, the stamp looks good facing one way, but I almost always do my stamping so that it's oriented so that I have to turn my head kind of, I guess, to the left, this way, whatever this is. So with the words at the bottom on the right hand side, like with the words starting on the bottom of the right hand side. That just gives my page a cohesive feel, that you're not kind of like looking at cards one way and then having to tilt your head the other way to look at other cards. And I just find that just gives it more of a cohesive feel for myself. You don't have to do it that way. You can do it whatever way feels right for you, obviously. But for me, I just find that makes a difference in my own experience of my pages. So what I'm writing here is Liv and Soph got a laugh out of TikTok teens who booked tickets to the Trump rally without intentions of attending to throw off expected numbers. Many thought it unsafe to hold a big indoor rally now. And I'm just writing those. I'm going to underline it because that's what I'm doing these days with my journaling. I just feel that it makes it look nice and anchored on the page and on the card. And I just used my Sharpie pen for that, which is different than a Sharpie marker. So the Sharpie pen is not permanent and it doesn't sink into your paper the way that a Sharpie marker would. And it create a lot of bleeding if you tried to use a Sharpie marker for journaling on these particular cards anyways. So I just used my journaling template, which is from hot off the press. It's a very, very old item. And I used that to give myself some lines. And now I'm just moving on to the next card, which seemed to be the next most easy card to document. So I knew I had a little story to tell here about setting up for some socially distant visiting. And so I added my first line of journaling, which said, "We set up the front deck for," and then I want to stamp out socially distant, and I don't want it to take up too much space. So therefore I'm using the skinniest of all of the alphas that I have, which is this, it's like a tiny version of the Studio Calico Stepping Stone stamp. And this stamp was available, I think it might have come in a Studio Calico kit, or maybe it was an add-on for a Studio Calico kit. Pardon me. Probably about 9 years ago. So this is a very, very old stamp set, but it is an oldie but a goodie. It's one of my favorite. I stamped the word socially in fish tank ink, and then obviously I didn't have room for distant there, so I'm going to put distant on the next line. And I really like the kind of messy look that you get from using an alpha stamp in this way, like just very casually. And I'm cleaning my stamps with my Lawn Fawn stamp chamois in between each stamping, and then putting it away in its little pocket so I don't lose any of the that stamp set is so old that the stamps are losing their stickiness, so I definitely don't want to lose any. So the rest of the journaling goes visiting, so socially distant visiting. Steph and Dave came over and we ate takeout and chatted. It was refreshing to see friends face to face rather than over a screen. And now I will go ahead and do some erasing. And one of the best things about this Sharpie pen is that you can erase over, you can gently erase over your writing. So if you've got kind of places where your lines are showing through, your pencil lines, you can just gently rub them off with a white eraser. I would recommend using a white eraser, and just so gently that you're really not creating any of those little eraser bits, but just kind of gently erasing that line. And I was able to also very gently erase over that ink because it is a dye ink, so it soaks right into the paper, as opposed to pigment ink, which would sit on top of the paper. And I would not recommend ever erasing over pigment ink, even when it's dry. It's going to be risky to do that. I can't guarantee that it would work, so I wouldn't even try it. Unless, maybe you're brave, you go ahead and try it. Let me know how it goes. Then we've got an embellishment from my stash. This is a star. It might be from Ellie's Studio. And I just used Tombow Mono multi-adhesive, which is my favorite adhesive for gluing paper to non-paper items. It's super, super strong and you don't need to use much. You can see that I actually used a lot on that star. That's because it was the first time I used that bottle of glue, and it does tend to ooze a little bit the first couple times you use it. So that's why I kind of use my fingers to take some off. Now this next card, I'm just using that Ali Edwards card with 4x6 card with the hearts, and I'm just writing, Sophie brings her penny board with her on most family walks these days, and underlining that. And that is enough for that page. So everything is documented. It's not touched up, but I'm basically, my first pass through on Project Life is to just get things documented. So minimal journal, like whatever essential journaling I need, and captions to just tell the story, so that, if I run out of steam, at least it's done. Here's that card. So I did decide to use it, even though the hearts are upside down on the flip side. It's so light. The hearts on the other side are pardon me, they are like an outlined, so they're very, very hard to see, but they end up looking a little bit like arrows because they're all lined up. So this is a news story. It's a Canadian news story, so I just wanted to document it, and it's pretty much self-sufficient. It's a bunch of tweets, and they kind of tell the story, so I don't really have to do any journaling about it or anything. Or maybe I do. Oh yes, I just wanted to say something here. So I'm going to grab some labels, and I'm actually going to mess this up. So yeah, this is not going to end well, but I'll fix it later on. So I thought I would layer some labels together, and I don't love how those are layering in the first place, but I go with it anyways. And now I'm using a slick surface writer because these labels are a bit of a shiny surface, and so if I were to use my Sharpie pen, it would smudge. If I had a Sharpie marker, I could use that if I had a fine point one, but I don't. I use these Staedtler Lumocolor markers. I don't like how the journaling goes. I don't like how I underlined it. I don't like anything about that. So I'm just going to leave it for now. And like I said, it is documented. And if I don't get back to it, it's fine. But if I have time, I'll go back and do something else with it. So I like moving on whenever possible. It helps me just kind of keep in the rhythm of my project life. So now this card that says slow down, I'm going to write not. And then I'm going to stick this sticker on right now. It says on the summer list. It's a chipboard piece from the kit. And I'm writing, Sophie gets better each time she rides her penny board. And I didn't underline that one. I'm not sure why. But it looks okay not underlined. Also, the words are bigger, right? So it looks okay not underlined. So now this cake picture, I just stuck it onto the 4x6 and I figure I'll decorate it later. And now here is this photo of Sophie, and I left all of this ground in the foreground so that I could do some journaling or some stamping or something on it. And I'm just trying to think about what I might want to put here. Just going to pop that chipboard piece back, and I'm just looking at, this is the Title Builder Volume 3 stamp set from Ellie Studio. And I want to say Summer Love, but I also really love that Loving stamp. But I don't think that Loving holds up enough to the word summer. So I'm just going to go with Summer Love. And I didn't condition these stamps before I put them down, so they're super sticky. And they, as you can see, they stuck to my photo. Also, I'm used to using matte photos, and I've recently had to switch to glossy photo paper because I can't get the matte paper for the price I want. And see, I didn't condition that stamp. I knew I didn't condition it, and I should have just taken the time to remove the ink and go ahead and use my eraser to condition it, but I didn't. So as you can see, it's stamped in a really splotchy way, but luckily my Misty Mini will help me to keep it in exactly the same spot so that when I stamp the second time, it's going to not leave any kind of wonky looks or anything. It's not going to shift and result in any kind of ghosting or anything like that on my image. So as you can see, that photo took a bit of a beating because it got stuck to the stamp so many times, but it's going to go inside of the pocket, so it's okay. It doesn't have any creases on it. It's just a little bit bent. So these are my acrylic pieces that I keep in a little dish from IKEA. And I'm just thinking about what I might want to do with this card. And I have a little bit of like a plan for journaling that I want to put in that. Basically, I want to put some words that go along with the cake. I basically just want to say the simple phrase of, the girls are learning to decorate cakes. They're kind of teaching themselves this year. And then I saw, when I was digging, I saw this Love This embellishment, which is, I'm pretty sure, an Ali Edwards. I can't see the logo there, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the, I think I got some type of a rubber piece grab bag or something, or I don't know what, but I got a bunch of rubber pieces from Allie Edwards, and I didn't pick them, so it must have been some type of a random assortment that I got. And I just think it's perfect. It's perfect for this page. It picks up on some of the orangey, pinky colors that are in the page, particularly on the other side. There's lots of orange and yellow in these pages, so I thought that it worked well. Now I'm still thinking about using this loving card here, and I'm just looking at these Weekend Stories stamp set from Studio Calico, and also looking at this Jen Scow stamp set and the stickers here and the chipboard. I'm going to go ahead and set this one down because I decided that it's definitely going to go there. It says June looks like this, because there were a lot of cakes baked in and decorated in June. We must stop with the cakes. We are going to have to start giving them away because there has been entirely too much cake. And I'm stuck. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm stuck. And I'm really struggling to know what to do with this loving card. I just want to use it so much because I like it so much. And I'm thinking about different stamping options and layering different stamps and maybe putting a stamp with some journaling blocks on it. And then finally, I'm going to at some point decide to just throw in the towel with this card and maybe use a different card. So that other one is too busy to go right beside that other already busy card, which has the cake on it. So if I add a card, I want it to be something, ideally what I'm looking for is a card that has some pattern on it, but not a pattern that's going to compete too much with the pretty bold pattern beside it, right? All those pluses. So I really like this card, but it's randomly houses and it doesn't really fit with the story. So what I like about this card, I believe this is a Hip Kit Club card from way back in the day. And what I really like about it is that it's summary. It's not necessarily about the story I'm going to tell, but it's definitely a summary card. And it has the yellow and the orangey color in it. Even it's kind of a brown, but it's an orangey brown. So I like it a lot. And I'm going to use this Jen Scow stamp set. It's called Journey, and it's one of my favorites because it talks about personal growth journey instead of travel journey, although you could use it for travel as well. So I started by writing The Girls Are, and now I'm going to use two of the phrases from this stamp set. The small phrase says, glad to be on this journey, but I'm going to do some selective inking here. I'm laying it out. The word journey is on there twice. So I've got the big word journey, and then in the small phrase, it also includes the word journey. So I'm going to use a little bit of washi tape. I'm choosing a pretty skinny washi tape so that it's easy for me to mask off just that tiny little word. Pardon my roots. I need a dye job stat. So there we go. I just stamped glad to be on this journey. And I am going to restamp just the word journey, because the rest of the phrase came out well. And I don't want to risk over stamping, when it kind of looks a little bit smushed. So I didn't want to get that. Restamp the word journey so that's nice and bright. But what I don't like about this is that, darn it, I left too much space between the small words and the big word. And I don't like that. And it's annoying me. Normally, I don't sweat these kind of small things, but I just felt like this could have been really great. And it just was... It was okay. So I took that same washi tape and split it in half, as you can see with my trimmer. That's a really great way to make skinnier washi tape. And then I pulled off too much. So I'm just going to piece together so that it's the right length. And there you go. That fills up that space, and it looks more like a design element than a mistake. And now the rest of my journaling just says, learning to decorate cakes this summer. So the overall message is the girls are glad to be on this journey, learning to decorate cakes this summer. And I like all the white open space on that card that balances with all of the clutter on the card next to it. By clutter, I just mean like lots going on with all those pluses and then the phrasing, and then the cake itself is kind of... a lot to take in. So here I am going back to this card, and I've been kind of percolating on it, and I found this other label set that is a little bit see-through. So that's why instead of layering it on top of the labels that were already there, I decided to pull them off because you could see the faint writing behind, like was showing through. Because these are very, very thin labels, these ones. They're slightly shiny, so I am going to use my Lumacolor Stettler marker. And I just rewrote the same caption. The caption isn't as important as what was actually in the tweets. And I really like how that looks, and I quite enjoy those craft colored label stickers from Studio Calico. I like them quite a lot. Although for this other photo, I'm going to be pulling out some Kelly Perky labels. These gray ones from a while back are going to work for this picture of Scott. We've got some stamping going on here. So I am stamping on the menu, which is a stamp from a Kelly Perky stamp set that I have. It's the Takeout stamp set. It's a kind of a recent one. And I stamped it with StazOn because those labels are a bit of a slick surface and I didn't want it to smudge, and I also didn't want to have to wait for it to dry. So put that right where the countertop was, kind of creating a black blob on the bottom of my photo. Now this is a beautiful photo of my daughter first thing in the morning. She sleeps with her blinds open because she loves seeing the trees in the morning and she loves seeing the stars at night. So when she lays in her bed, she can see the stars. And so anyhow, I went in and took this picture because they both looked so cute there in the sunlight in the morning. It wasn't that early. She does get up earlier than her sister, but not that early. So I just stamped this stamp because I was afraid that it wouldn't show up if I just put it on the photo itself. So I stamped it onto this label that I don't particularly like the color of. And now I'm just cutting, like trimming it down so that all that I have is the white. So it's basically I'm making it into a sticker. And I'm putting that on my other daughter's bedspread. And I'm clicking off, like I'm checking off the box for snooze button. So I wanted to include both of these cards on the same page because they're both pictures of my two daughters' beds as they're waking. Well, one is her sleeping, she wasn't waking up, but the other one is my daughter waking up, which is the one I'm working on right now. So I took this early bird stamp set from Hero Arts. I have the early bird and the night owl sets, and I keep them together in a little storage pouch. And I thought that that made a really nice embellishment on one of those labels. I just stuck it on so that it was overhanging and trimmed it down just to give it that kind of nice look. I like hanging things off the edges and trimming them down. It's one of my favorite things to do. Makes things look like they belong on the card. This little piece of chipboard says "Let in the light." And I thought that was pretty appropriate, and I thought it layered nicely with this. Ideally, I'd like it to be a different color, but that's okay. And then the other one says "Summer Plans." So I went with a tone on a tone look for both of them. So the green with green on Sophie's, and then the gray with the gray on Liv's. Now I want to do a little bit of embellishing because I feel like the stories are told at this point. So I started to say earlier on in this narration process that my first pass is just getting stuff documented. I feel like I've completed that first pass and now I'm working my way back and adding some embellishments. And so the first thing I'm going to do is put this little sun wood veneer in the center of this watermelon. I just felt like the card was nice on its own, but it just needed a little something to add some texture or interest to the card because I have another card that's not going to have anything on it, or that's what I think at this point anyways. So this is my second pass of all of these cards. So I'm having a look at this one, and this space on the deck is begging for a stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and put one there. I took this from the Home stamp set from Kelly Perky. I think it's called Home. No, it's actually called MySpace. It's from 2018. And I'm using VersaFine Black Onyx because it is my favorite really, really dark ink. So unless if I have to use StazOn, I will use VersaFine on my photos. I basically only use StazOn on a glossy surface of not a photo, but on a card that might be glossy or a label or something. So I'm thinking about potentially putting something under where the skateboard is. And I'm also just wanting to use some of these wood veneer suns that came in the Stories by the Month kit. Oh, I'm going to put one right there. I think that looks cute. And I really want to put something on this skateboard photo, but that is just not going to cut it. That little tiny yellow chipboard piece is just too... It's being overpowered by the subject matter. Oh, matter. That I really like that, and I think it fits really well on the scrap room photo there, but it doesn't make any sense. But look at this. Fun works really well on this photo because it does stand up to the boldness of the skateboard. And as you can see, you don't have to use a whole lot of that Tombow Mono Multi. Look at the tiny little bead that I put on that. That will be in place forever. That will not move for years and years. No matter how many times I flip the pages, that sun will not come off unless if I pry it off. So I am going to put something on this scrap room photo, and it's always a little bit challenging adding to a photo that already has a lot going on. So I'm going to have to put something to anchor that little chipboard piece. But before I put those embellishments away, I decided to just kind of trial a couple of others and see if I could use any more before I move on. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a large-ish label right there, and that just gives your eye a landing spot. So even though that photo is really quite a lot to take in, when you add this large label, even if you put things on the label, as long as you don't put too much stuff on the label, it gives you just this calming force to the photo. So then I have this photo of these really cool sandwiches that my daughter made after watching a TikTok video. It's basically a bagel, but you cut each slice, like bagels are usually cut in half. These bagels are cut in quarters, so you have to cut each half in half lengthwise, and then you layer avocado and tomato, and I forget what else is on it. I think cheese, and I can't remember what else, and mayonnaise, and it's so yummy and so good. So I used a label there, and most of the labels that I'm using on this video are from Kelly Purkey. Those sheets of labels that you see, they're from Kelly Purkey kits from previous years. I haven't gotten Kelly Purkey kits in a while. I don't think she does them anymore. So then I added that chipboard piece that says June stuff that came from the kit to that journaling card that I had done already. And I'm just adding a couple of wood veneer stars here. It seems like stars and suns are the theme of the day. And what I love about wood veneer on Project Life pages is that it just adds a tiny little bit of interest and detail to your cards and just that dimension, right? I'm outlining the word love here just to give it a little bit more emphasis and weight. There are some heavy things on this page, and they're all kind of over to the side. So I just wanted to introduce a little bit more black. The journaling is already black, but I just wanted to introduce a little bit more. I have my pages reversed here. I don't know if I realized I had done that or not, but I'm going to add a little wood veneer while I'm at it to a couple of other places. So one on the journey card and one right here by Early Bird. And just that repetition creates a little bit of cohesiveness. And it also gives you just a little bit of like a dynamic energy to your page when things are repeated. Especially stars. Stars are very dynamic. They feel energetic. So I just included, I don't usually show you guys me putting the cards into the pockets, but where I'm using some of these flaps, I thought I would show the process of putting the cards in. I had already taken the photos at this point, so they just need to slide in. Of course, it's easy on the left, on the right-hand page, because the pockets are on the front, right? So you just slide them in. And when I align these, I just align the card and then stick the sticker down wherever it has to stick in order for the card to be overlapping with the card beneath it, if that makes sense. Now, this is the stamp set that I use from Lawn Fawn. It's called, what is it called? I think it's called Open Me. One is called Press Here and the other is called Open Me. And I often use them to just indicate that there's a flip pocket, but I decided not to in this case because I just didn't feel like I needed it. And I was also a little lazy and feeling like I just wanted to be done. So here's how this spread looks when it's all kind of placed out together and finished. I love this card. I think this is my favorite card of the whole spread. I just love it. And I also really like this combination of the photo with the journaling card beside it. And cats are always good, right? We love cats. So that's it for this process video. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you all have a really great scrappy week.